Hello, I'm Dr. Fiore, and I'm going to be your professor for British Literature 1. This is going to be a short video slash lecture. Should be about 20 minutes, maybe 25. For the first half, I'm going to go over the syllabus and the general expectations for the course. And then the second half will be just some background information about Beowulf that will help you get started with the text because it's our first reading. So let's get started. So the syllabus can be found on Blackboard in course information. The most important item on the first page is my email address. I say this to you because during the semester, maybe even now, you're going to have questions about something, or maybe you're absent and you need to know what you missed. Maybe you're worried about an upcoming paper. Whatever your question or concern, communicate with me. That is what I'm here for. You're very important to me. I check my emails multiple times a day, except on the weekends. So if you have any type of question or concern, please don't be shy. There is no such thing as a stupid question. Please do communicate with me. If you ever do email me and you don't get a response in 24 hours, it means that somehow I missed your email. So email me again. Also, my office hours are on the first page. I have office hours right before our class meets. As you know, hopefully the first 2 weeks of the semester are remote, but by the third week we'll be back on campus. So when that happens, my office hours will be right before our class. So very convenient for you. Moving on, the next item I wanted to address is books. So as you probably know by this point, there are no required books for this class. Everything that we are reading, you'll be provided a link to a PDF online. So I won't be physically giving you the PDFs, but I'll be providing the links, and everything is available online for free. However, if you are the type of student who prefers actual books, just email me and I can provide you with the titles and ISBN numbers of the books that I used to order for this class. Okay? So the reading. There's no easy way to say this, so I'm just going to say it. The readings in this course are difficult. Don't hate me. I don't choose them. I'm required by Kane to cover Beowulf and everything else that we read. And that's just so you have the best and most thorough education. So just go into this knowing that the readings are challenging. They're challenging for everybody. You can't get just reading once, even reading it twice. They're difficult. So my advice to you is go into it knowing that the readings are challenging and just do your best. Don't go crazy. Don't worry if you don't understand it. Just go slow and do your best. Now, when we have a reading assignment, of course, I would love it if you read the entire reading. But let's say you do your best and you're only able to get through half of it. That's okay, all right? It's more important that you read slowly and understand the material than you read it all and become overwhelmed. So all I ask, just do your best, okay? And if that means that you're only able to do half of a reading, that's okay. We can work with that. So something else that I do to help you with the readings, I will always give you reading questions. So the reading questions are not busy work. They literally steer you right to the most important developments in the text. So I would actually advise that you do the reading questions first, and because then you'll have a much better sense of what is going on. And then I would advise you to go back and start reading after you've completed the reading questions. Now, the reading questions are not mandatory. I will never collect them or ask you to see them. They are just to help you. But I would strongly suggest that you try them because they will immensely help you with the text. Oh, and also the readings they're also very good. I genuinely like all of them, though at first I maybe wasn't so into some of them, but now I really do genuinely enjoy and appreciate them all. So, in addition to being challenging, I would say they're worth the work. Um, Make sure that you do the reading and the work as it is assigned. This class is set up to for your success. About let's see, a fifth of your grade, 20% of your grade is determined by class participation. So all you have to do to get that an A in class participation is you come to the remote classes, and then when we meet on campus, you come to class, and there will always be a discussion question or several. And all I want you to do is just weigh in on the discussion question, share your opinion, tell us your thoughts. So if you do that, you get 20 points for each discussion that you participate in, and that adds up over the course of the semester to, I think, 200 points, which is the same weight as an exam. So it's getting an A in this class is definitely attainable. Again, participation is a huge part of your final grade, and that's because I want you to be engaged. I don't want this to be a class where you're bored and looking at your watch and wondering when are we going to leave. I want it to be a class where we all participate, and that makes it much better and more engaging, and your grades will be better. So just do the work as it's assigned, come to class, participate, and an A is very attainable because we have two papers and they're not very long, and we have a midterm and a final. However, we prepare for the midterm and the final a week in advance. You get the questions that are going to be on the final a week in advance, and the midterm and final are open book. So again, it's designed for your success. If you do the work as it is assigned, I promise you this will not be, the reading may be challenging, but you'll find that you're able to get a good grade. Let's see. I think that is everything. The last thing, attendance. Attendance is super important because, again, you get points every time you attend. You get 20 points. And if you're not there, you can't get those points. So I would advise you to come to these 2 remote sessions, and then when we're on campus, try to come every week. The rule university-wide for classes that meet once a week is that 1 absence is fine. So that's what I go by as a guideline. So I would say to you, if you have 1 absence, don't worry about it. No problem. That's fine. You don't have to tell me anything. Just know what is due upon your return. Try not to have 2 absences. Save that second absence in case you get sick or you have some type of an emergency, okay? And then I would say having the 2 absences is not going to make or break you. But 3 is where you're starting to get into more dangerous territory because you're going to be missing material. You're going to start losing points. And then if you have 4 absences, you do risk the possibility of not passing the class. Okay, so coming to class, again, super important. That said, should something happen to you during the semester, like an illness or family emergency or some other type of extenuating circumstances, it is super important that you communicate with me because I'm not a mind reader. So if you're not coming to class, all I know is that you're not coming to class. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. So communicate with me. The last thing I want to address, and I'm sorry to say this on the first day, but there's always an incident at least once a semester of plagiarism. Please don't plagiarize. I can always tell when a paper is plagiarized, and there's software to help us it spots it immediately. So just please don't do. You guys are smart. You have opinions. You have lots to say. You don't need to plagiarize. In my experience, students plagiarize because they are overwhelmed and backed into a corner, and school and work and life are kind of just all piling up, and then there's a paper due tomorrow and you don't know what to do, so you plagiarize. Don't do that. If you ever find yourself in that situation, contact me and we'll figure something out. Don't come to class and ask for an extension in front of everyone, because then the rest of the class is going to ask for an extension. Contact me privately and we'll figure something out, but don't plagiarize because there are very severe repercussions and nobody wants that for you. Okay, so that is it for the syllabus. If you have any questions about the syllabus or about the general runnings of the course, please ask them during our virtual meeting later on today. And now I'm going to switch gears to Beowulf. So this is just going to be about 10 minutes of background that will help you as you're reading it. So the general consensus amongst scholars is that Beowulf was composed in the 8th century, and the author or the poet is unknown, but it's agreed by scholars that it was a single Christian poet. Okay, so the poet is Christian, and he is writing about a heroic society hundreds of years in the past. Okay, so this society that he is writing about was not Christian. They were pagan. It is possible that some elements or traces of Christianity seeped into their pagan culture, but they were predominantly pagan. So it's important that you recognize that, because the values of the poet is Christian. His values are very different from those of his characters, and that becomes important because we see the influence of the poet's Christianity. He often imposes it onto the characters, and what I mean by that is that heroic society valued it's centered around warfare. So warfare is constant in heroic society. There's always a battle coming. There's always a war coming. It's constant. It is inevitable, and life is centered around it. So things that are important are seeking glory in battle, material gain, and vengeance. Now, Christianity celebrates humility, forgiveness. It does not encourage material wealth. So you can see how those are two very different value systems. So at times you will see the poet judging heroic society, and at times you'll also see some of the characters saying things like, "Oh, praise God," and thanks to God for this, even though some of the things they may be doing aren't really in sync with Christian values. And that's because that's the poet implanting his views into making the characters praise God. That's what the belief is. So as you are reading, something I want you to be aware of is to start thinking about is, where do you see the influence of the poet's Christian beliefs? Where do you see him maybe judging heroic society? Another question I have for you is, do you see is this poem a critique, or is it a celebration of heroic society? So just for the record, the majority opinion held by scholars is that Beowulf is a critique of heroic society, not a celebration. Now you can disagree with that. You just have to have the support from the text. And then lastly, at the end, when you read Beowulf and you think about it, what do you think the message is? Is it life-affirming to you, or is it more about the futility of human effort and human endeavor? What do you think? So some of the values of heroic society, which are important to know, the most important relationship that existed in heroic society was that between a warrior and his king. So obviously in this world, women didn't really have a place because we couldn't fight. So men, warriors, it was their sacred duty to fight to the death for the king. Anything less would be considered dishonorable, and you'd probably die of embarrassment. So it'd be better to die in battle. That's the honorable thing to do. So fighting to the death, a sacred duty. And let's see. Oh, and these warriors, if they lived, were very handsomely rewarded by the king. The king or lord's responsibility was not to fight himself, but to protect his people. So the king best protects his people by ruling and allocating the fighting to someone else. So that's why the king has a band of warriors or retainers to fight for him. Now, why is that important? Because Beowulf, in the second half of his life, or in his elder years, becomes a king. But he is not a good king, and that's because he's still a warrior at heart, and he ends up dying because he goes into battle at the age of 70 with a dragon. Now, as king, he should have had his retainers or warriors fight that fight for him, but he doesn't. So, just to be clear, a king is not supposed to put himself in harm's way because a king needs to be alive to protect his people. Let's see. Oh, another very important relationship was the relationship that existed between warriors. So, let's say you and I are on the same team and we're fighting another tribe. If you get killed, it is my responsibility to get your man price, your value, from whoever has killed you. Now, I don't know how well that worked out in practice, because I imagine if there are two tribes and they're having bloody warfare, you can't just go over and say, hey, give me X amount of dollars for this person's life. But in theory, that's what was supposed to happen. If one of your kinsmen was killed, you are responsible for getting his man price from the killer. And again, that would be a sacred duty. And then I mentioned that women don't really have a big role in this world. But upon closer, if you look more closely, there is actually one very important role that women serve. And that is the role of peace weaver. So what was a peace weaver? A peace weaver was a woman who would be chosen. Let's say, again, we have the two tribes that are butting heads. So a woman would be chosen. She would be married to, let's say, a prince or king from the other side. And the idea was that this marriage would create a new relationship between the formerly feuding tribes, and now they would be at peace. However, in heroic literature, these relationships never work. They end disastrously, especially for the woman, for the peace weaver, and seems to read, to me at least, as criticism of heroic society, at least in Beowulf. There are 2 points in Beowulf where peace weavers are mentioned, and it provides really, just, what's the word, really devastating commentary, I think, because the consequences for the women are just enormously devastating. So that's something to think about. And then, of course, plot. I just wanted to give you the basic plot of Beowulf, in case you're not familiar with it. So Beowulf is the story of a kingdom that has been attacked for 12 winters by Grendel the monster. Now, nobody can stop Grendel. So this kingdom has just been living 12 years in fear and agony and desperation because they're at Grendel's mercy. So Beowulf hears about this, and he travels overseas, and he presents himself to the king, and he says, hi, I've heard about your troubles, and I'm here to help you. And so Beowulf fights Grendel, and sure enough, he defeats him. He kills Grendel. So the king is super happy, and they throw a huge celebration, and everyone gets drunk, and then they eat too much, and then they go to sleep, and Grendel's mother attacks to get vengeance for her son's death. So the king, again, is distraught. He doesn't know what to do. Beowulf comes to the rescue again. He kills Grendel's mother. And then everything is right in the kingdom. Beowulf returns to his homeland. 50 years pass, and he becomes king. Now, as king, as I said earlier, he's not really the best. That's because he's still a warrior at heart. And a dragon awakes, and it starts attacking his kingdom. And Beowulf is still chasing the glory of battle. He goes into battle with the dragon, and ultimately it kills him. So that's the plot in a nutshell. I'm going to read you 2 quotes from critics describing Beowulf. They're very short. The first is from H.L. Rogers. He says, the poet saw the heroic past of the Danes and the Geats, those are the 2 tribes, through the eyes of a Christian Anglo-Saxon. In his poem, heroic, material, and worldly things all fail. And then the translator of the the version we're reading. Seamus Heaney writes, oops, sorry about that. Seamus Heaney writes, the entire poem could be viewed as the poet's lament for heroes like Beowulf who went into the darkness without the light of the poet's own Christian faith. So, see, those are two critical views. Question for you is, do you agree with them? You don't have to agree. You can disagree. The last thing I want to say is that Beowulf, even though now we consider it a masterpiece and a must-read and one of the foundations of English literature, it wasn't actually studied as a work of literature until 1906, and that was when J.R.R. Tolkien of Hobbit fame presented a paper on Beowulf in England. And in his paper, he argued that, Beowulf had a lyric beauty, but up until that point, critics didn't really take it seriously because Beowulf fights monsters, and monsters aren't real. You could say symbolically there are monsters, like the COVID virus is a monster, or evil is a monster. But the monsters, and when I first read Beowulf, I thought the monsters were silly too, and it was what I wanted to do was interpret them as symbols, like, Grendel is a symbol for evil, or Grendel is an embodiment of death. But J.R.R. Tolkien argued that the monsters are actually a good thing because they're larger than human, so they make Beowulf timeless. Now, I don't know if you buy that or not, but the audience that J.R.R. Tolkien presented the paper in front of did, and ever since, we've all been reading Beowulf. Now, the last thing I want to say to you is that it's super important for you to realize that the original audiences would not have seen the monsters as symbols. They believed in monsters. So to them, Grendel was real, the dragon was real, Grendel's mother, all real, and Beowulf was a badass monster killer. So the monsters cannot be interpreted as symbols. They are flesh and blood, living, breathing entities. So that is it for today. I will see you for our virtual discussion. I forget what time that is, but it will be in the Blackboard announcement. So I will see you later. Thank you for watching.